By now, we've all heard about Elon Musk's efforts to reshape the U.S. government. But tonight, we'll introduce you to another tech billionaire, one who set his sights on radically changing the way the Pentagon buys and uses weapons. His name is Palmer Luckey, and he's the founder of Anduril, a California defense products company. Luckey says for too long, the U.S. military has relied on overpriced and outdated technology. He argues a Tesla has better AI than any U.S. aircraft, and a Roomba vacuum has better autonomy than most of the Pentagon's weapons systems. So Anduril is making a line of autonomous weapons that operate using artificial intelligence, no human required. Some international groups have called those types of weapons killer robots. But Palmer Luckey says it is the future of warfare.
I've always said that we need to transition from being the world police to being the world gun store.
Do we want to be the world's gun store?
I think so. I think we have to.
Says the guy who sells weapons.
See, I agree it sounds self-fulfilling, but you have to remember, I also got into this industry because I believe that.
Palmer Luckey isn't your typical defense industry executive. His daily uniform, flip-flops and a Hawaiian shirt, is more suited for Margaritaville than the military. But the 32-year-old billionaire is the founder of Anduril, whose line of American-made autonomous weapons looks like it came straight out of a sci-fi movie, and whose slick marketing videos wouldn't be out of place in one. There's the Roadrunner, a twin turbo-jet-powered drone interceptor that can take off, identify, and strike. If it doesn't find a target, it can land and try again. Anduril also makes headsets, which allow soldiers to see 360 degrees in combat. And there's this. It's an electromagnetic warfare system that can be programmed to jam enemy systems, knocking out drone swarms. It's not some futuristic fantasy. Anduril systems are already being used by the U.S. military and in the war in Ukraine.
We shouldn't be sending our people to stand in other countries, putting our men and women, our sons and daughters at risk for the sovereignty of other nations.
So you'd rather have an American-made product in their hands than our soldiers over there?
Absolutely, every time. And I think that that's one of the reasons that autonomy is so powerful. Right now, there's so many weapon systems that require manning. If I can have one guy commanding and controlling 100 aircraft, that's a lot easier than having to have a pilot in every single one, and it puts a lot fewer American lives at risk.
To be clear, autonomy does not mean remote controlled. Once an autonomous weapon is programmed and given a task, it can use artificial intelligence for surveillance or to identify, select, and engage targets. No operator needed.
It's a scary idea to some people.
It's a scary idea, but I mean, that's the world we live in. I'd say it's a lot scarier, for example, to imagine a weapon system that doesn't have any level of intelligence at all. There's no moral high ground in making a landmine that can't tell the difference between a school bus full of children and Russian armor. It's not a question between smart weapons and no weapons. It's a question between smart weapons and dumb weapons.
Luckey showed us how those so-called smart weapons can be synchronized on Anduril's AI platform. It's called Lattice. Lattice collects data from various sensors and sources, including satellites, drones, radar, and cameras, allowing, he says, the AI to analyze, move assets, and execute missions faster than a human.
If you were having to require the human operator to actually map every single action and say, hey, do this, if that, then this, it would take so long to manage it that you would be better off just remotely piloting it. If it's the AI on board all these weapons that makes it possible to make it so easy.
There are lots of people who go, oh, AI, I don't know, I don't trust it, it's going to go rogue.
I would say that it is something to be aware of, but in the grand scheme of things to be afraid of, there's things that I'm much more terrified of. And I'm a lot more worried about evil people with mediocre advances in technology than AI deciding that it's going to wipe us all out.
Luckey says all Anduril's weapons have a kill switch that allow a human operator to intervene if needed. But the Secretary General of the United Nations has called lethal autonomous weapons, quote, politically unacceptable and morally repugnant.
When people say to you, look, it's evil, how do you respond to that?
I usually don't bother because if I am going to argue with them, I usually poke it. I'm like, okay, so do you think that NATO should be armed with squirt guns or slingshots? How about sternly worded letters? Would you like that? Would you like it if NATO they just have a bunch of guys sitting at typewriters, 1,000 monkeys writing letters to Vladimir Putin, begging him to not invade Ukraine? Our entire society exists because of a credible backstop of violence threatened by the United States and our allies all over the world. And thank goodness for it.
It might sound flip, but part of Palmer Luckey's philosophy is that autonomous weapons ultimately promote peace by scaring adversaries away.
My position has been that the United States needs to arm our allies and partners around the world so that they can be prickly porcupines that nobody wants to step on. Nobody wants to bite them.
In your mind, is it enough just to have all these things as deterrents? Or do they have to be deployed and used?
They have to believe that you can use them.
By the end of this year, Anduril says it will have secured more than $6 billion in government contracts worldwide.
When you first came into this space and you're a tech guy in a Hawaiian shirt and you're walking into the Pentagon, maybe in flip-flops, I don't know. Were you welcomed with open arms?
There were a very small number of people who welcomed me with open arms, and everyone else thought that I was nuts.
Nuts because there hasn't been a new company in the defense industry in a significant way since the end of the Cold War. For decades, 5 defense contractors called the primes have dominated the industry. Typically, the primes present an idea to the Pentagon. If the Pentagon buys it, the government pays for the company to develop it, even if it's late or goes over budget. Luckey started Anduril to flip that procurement structure on its head.
The idea behind Anduril was to build not a defense contractor, but a defense product company.
What's the difference?
Contractors, in general, are paid to do work, whether or not it succeeds. A product company has a very different mentality. You're putting in your own money, you're putting in your own time. My vision was to build a company that would show up not with a PowerPoint describing how taxpayers are going to pay all my bills, but with a working product where all the risk has been baked out that will work for enough things that you can save our country hundreds of billions of dollars a year.
It may not surprise you that Palmer Luckey's father was a car salesman. His mother took on the role of homeschooling him and his 3 sisters. Luckey says he was fascinated by electronics and spent a lot of time tinkering in his parents' garage in Long Beach, California. By age 19, his tinkering turned into Oculus, the virtual reality company. And at 21, Palmer Luckey fulfilled every young founder's dream when he sold Oculus to Facebook for $2 billion. The Wonder Kid graced the covers of magazines, but 2 years later, he was fired from Facebook.
Why did you get fired?
Well, everyone's got a different story, but it boils down to I gave $9,000 to a political group that was for Donald Trump and against Hillary Clinton. To be a Trump supporter in 2016, this was at the height of the election insanity and derangement in Silicon Valley. And so I think that a lot of people thought back then that you could just fire a Trump supporter.
Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg has denied that Luckey was fired for his political views.
What do you think now when you see those tech leaders, Mark Zuckerberg, lined up behind President Trump now at his inauguration?
I am inclined to let every single one of them get away with it. Look.
What do you mean get away with it?
Coming around to a point of view that is more aligned with the American people broadly, I think is good for the country. I think it is not good for you to have techno-corpo elites that are radically out of step with where the American people are.
In 2017, Luckey says he left Silicon Valley with hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank and a chip on his shoulder.
I was fired at the height of my career. My gears were ground, and I really wanted to prove that I was somebody, that I was not a one-hit wonder, and that I still had it in me to do big things.
He says he thought about starting companies to combat obesity or fix the prison system, but ultimately decided to break into the defense industry.
Have you run into any people who don't take you seriously because you were never in the military?
I don't think so. I think I owe that to the James Bond franchise. Everyone in the military has seen James Bond movies, and they all like Q, right? I'm the wacky gadget man. I'm the guy who types on the computer and pushes up my glasses and then gives them a strange thing to help them accomplish their mission.
And this is his laboratory, Anduril's 640,000 square foot headquarters in Costa Mesa, California. It's a mix of high-tech carpentry and robotic engineering. A sign on the floor pokes fun at the boss's shoe choice. But Luckey wanted to show us something off campus. We hopped in his 1985 Humvee. The billionaire told us he also owns a decommissioned Black Hawk helicopter, a 48-crew submarine, and a Navy speedboat. Yeah. In Dana Point, we took a ride 15 minutes off the coast to see the largest weapon in Anduril's arsenal, this submarine. It's called the Dive XL. It's about the size of a school bus and works autonomously.
It's not remote controlled by this computer. It's doing it on the brain, on the submarine itself. So if I told it to go off and perform some mission that's months long, like go to this target, listen for this particular signature, and if you see this signature, run. If you see this one, hide. If you see this one, follow it. It can do that all on its own without being detected, without communicating with it.
Anduril says the Dive XL can travel 1,000 miles fully submerged. Australia has already invested $58 million in the subs to help defend its seas from China. But Anduril's most anticipated weapon has been closely guarded until this month. Hidden inside this hangar, Anduril's unmanned fighter jet called Fury. There is no cockpit or stick or rudder because there's no pilot.
The idea is that you're building a robotic fighter jet that is, flying with manned fighters and is doing what you ask it to do, recommending things that be done, taking risks that you don't want human pilots to take.
Fury represents a big turning point for the company. Anduril was viewed by some inside the defense industry as a tech bro startup until it beat out several of the prime defense contractors to make an unmanned fighter jet for the Air Force. Fury is scheduled to take its first test flight this summer. If selected by the Pentagon, it, like all Anduril products, will be produced in the U.S.
The war games say we're going to run out of munitions in 8 days in a fight with China. If we have to fight Iran and China and Russia all at the same time, we are screwed.
If we go to war, right?
Yep.
Your version of what Anduril's place is in a conflict.
Yep.
How do you view it?
I think what we're going to be doing is first connecting a lot of these systems that otherwise would not have been talking to one another. We're going to be making large numbers of cruise missiles, large numbers of fighter jets, large numbers of surface and subsurface systems. I guess I would hope that Anduril is making most of the stuff that's being used on day 9, day 10, day 11, day 100. I think a lot of that is going to be coming out of our factories after everything else is run dry.
In the past year, hospitals, pharmacies, tech companies, Las Vegas's biggest hotels and casinos have been paralyzed by ransomware attacks in which hackers break into a corporate network, encrypt or lock up critical files, and hold them hostage until a ransom is paid. As we first reported in April, it's a crime that has been growing more costly and disruptive every year. Now, cybersecurity researchers fear it's about to get worse, with the emergence of an audacious group of young criminal hackers from the US, UK, and Canada the FBI calls Scattered Spider. More troubling, they've teamed up with Russia's most notorious ransomware gang. Last September, one of the most pernicious ransomware attacks in history was unleashed on MGM Resorts, costing the hotel and casino giant more than $100 million. It disrupted operations at a dozen of the most renowned gaming palaces on the Las Vegas Strip: MGM Grand, Aria, Mandalay Bay, New York, the Bellagio. Anthony Curtis is a Las Vegas fixture. He's so good at counting cards, he's been banned from card games here. He now publishes the Las Vegas Advisor, a monthly newsletter on all things Vegas.
Incredibly, when it happened, I was in an MGM property, and it happened while we were having dinner, and there just began to be a rumbling that something was going on. When I went down into the casino, I could see then that slot machines were sitting dark, people were scrambling around, the shutdown was starting to take effect.
Across the Vegas Strip, thousands of slot machines suddenly stopped paying out.
So all of a sudden now people are going, how do I get my money? What's wrong? And the people were sitting there waiting and couldn't get paid.
Were they angry?
They were getting angry, yeah. And this was just the tip of the iceberg.
Elevators were malfunctioning. Parking gates froze. Digital door keys wouldn't work. As computers went down, reservations locked up and lines backed up at the front desks.
Anything that required technology was not working.
Sounds like chaos.
Nobody knew what to do. And including the employees. The employees just had to, beg forgiveness and patience.
Look, it's corporate terrorism at its finest.
The company declined our interview request, but at a conference a month after the hack, MGM's CEO admitted the disruptions were devastating.
For the next 4 or 5 days, with 36,000 hotel rooms and some regional properties, we were completely in the dark.
The hackers demanded $30 million to unlock MGM's data. The company refused, but they still paid a price, $100 million in lost revenue and millions more to rebuild their servers. So how did the intruders get in? Through a technique of deception and manipulation called social engineering. First, hackers zeroed in on an employee, gathering information from the dark web and open sources like LinkedIn. Next, a smooth-talking hacker impersonating the employee called the MGM Tech Help Desk and convinced them to reset his password. With that, the hacker was inside MGM's computers and unleashed the destructive malware. Anthony Curtis says it was the cyber criminals' version of an Ocean's 11 heist.
They're doing it the old-fashioned way. I mean, they're doing it the new way, but with the old-fashioned goal. They want to get the money.
What do you make of that?
I don't want to be too glowing like I like these guys, because they're just crooks, right? But these hackers were able to turn the tables. The casinos have their systems, they have their protections, they have their experts, they have their security. These guys are better.
Later, MGM's biggest competitor, Caesars, admitted it also suffered a social engineering attack around the same time, suspected by the same group. But Caesars paid a ransom, reportedly $15 million, and suffered no disruptions.
From an FBI perspective, our position is we recommend a ransom not be paid, but we understand it's a business decision during a time of crisis.
Brian Vorndran is head of the FBI's cyber division. He told us ransomware attacks have grown increasingly brazen.
Any way you look at the numbers, it's a problem for the global economy and for the U.S. economy and for the security of the United States. There's estimates that global losses exceed $1 billion per year.
Have you made any arrests in the Las Vegas cases?
We're not going to talk about specific cases or specific companies with.
But he did point us toward the prime suspect.
When we talk about the actors behind some of the more recent ransomware attacks, the name that's generally raised is Scattered Spider. And that's a criminal group that we have a lot of attention on because of the havoc they're wreaking across the United States.
Scattered Spider is what the FBI calls a loose-knit web of predominantly native English-speaking hackers responsible for the casino hacks and dozens more. Their specialty is social engineering.
Part of their success is because they are fluent in Western culture. They know how our society works. They know what to say to get someone to do something.
Allison Nixon is Chief Research Officer at Unit 221B, a cybersecurity firm that focuses on English-speaking cyber criminals. She says Scattered Spider is just one of many illicit hacking groups, all part of a sprawling collection of online criminals calling themselves the Community, or the COM.
The COM is a subculture. It is specifically an English-speaking youth subculture that has arisen in the past few years. It's very new, but it's surprisingly disruptive.
Members of the COM have hacked into companies like Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Electronic Arts. How many people are involved?
Years ago, it was maybe a few hundred people, but since 2018, the population has exploded because of the money coming into these groups. And there's thousands of people involved at this point.
How are they connected?
They connect over the internet, social spaces where people hang out, gaming servers. It's almost analogous to like maybe the back alley where the bad kids hang out, but on the internet.
How old are we talking about?
Males under the age of 25.
Under 25 down to how young?
Like 13, 14.
Involved in pulling off major crimes.
Yeah.
Members communicate and post pictures on messaging apps like Telegram. Their chatter, a toxic stew of racism, sexism, boasting about the money they've scammed and how menacing they are.
There are these toxic online spaces where young people can socialize and mingle with criminals and gang members. And the end result of all of this is this online subculture has formed that glorifies crime, that measures one's personal worth by how much harm they can cause the world.
Scattered Spider is one of the most sophisticated offshoots of the COM. Their criminal exploits caught the attention of cybersecurity companies and other hackers, including the most notorious Russian ransomware gang, Black Cat. They saw the young native English-speaking Westerners as a force multiplier. Both claimed credit for the MGM attack.
Historically speaking, Russian cybercriminals did not like working with Western cybercriminals. There was not only a language barrier, but also they kind of looked down on them and viewed them as unprofessional.
The Russian and Western hackers met in the shadowy corners of the dark web and now are powerful partners in crime. Scattered Spider uses its English and social engineering skills to break into Western companies' networks. Black Cat provides its experience and its malware, used in some of the most shocking ransomware attacks, including the 2021 attack on Colonial Pipeline, which caused gas shortages up and down the East Coast, and this year's attack on United Health Group, which disrupted pharmacies nationwide. The State Department is offering a $15 million reward for information on Russia's Black Cat.
This is Black Cat's data leak site.
John DiMaggio, a former analyst at the National Security Agency, now investigates ransomware as chief security strategist for the cybersecurity company Analyst One.
So there's a term, it's called ransomware as a service, that's been given to the structure and the format of these gangs.
DiMaggio says ransomware as a service has taken the crime to a new level. The long-established Russian gangs like Black Cat offer their services, malware, experience negotiating ransoms and laundering money, to what they call affiliates, like Scattered Spider.
So in return, when a victim pays an extortion, the profit that comes from it is now shared amongst those criminals.
The most successful Russian gangs are run like legitimate companies, with easy-to-navigate online platforms, 24-hour service desks, even human resources to hire software developers.
There are people that specialize in developing malware and ransomware, and they're in very high demand.
You said you've gotten to know some of these people.
Yes.
Are they mostly young men?
The leadership are people in their 40s, late 30s. They're people that have got experience, the people that have a financial background.
DiMaggio says the Russian government provides a safe haven for ransomware gangs.
As long as they don't target, an organization that falls within Russia or the former Soviet state, they don't get prosecuted. It's not considered a crime.
It's not considered a crime to attack American businesses?
It's crazy, right? That's how it works, though.
So it's like they operate with impunity.
100%. That's the whole reason why this is such a popular crime.
Russian ransomware has become such a threat, the elite cyber warriors at the National Security Agency have joined the fight. Before retiring last March, Rob Joyce was NSA's director of cybersecurity. He told us the Colonial Pipeline attack was a wake-up call.
It caused us to step back and decide that we had to put more resources into this foreign threat. So one of the things NSA has, we have hackers. And it really, at times, takes a hacker to defeat a hacker. That's the value NSA can bring is we can identify people, specific people involved in some of these activities.
The NSA helped identify the Russian hacker responsible for the Colonial Pipeline attack. And in January 2022, after months of negotiations, Russia arrested him and other accomplices. But 5 weeks later, it all came undone.
Following the Ukraine invasion, those people were let out of jail.
So they're back in business.
Yes, sir.
And now they've teamed up with the young native English speakers of Scattered Spider. The FBI's Brian Vorndran calls it an evolution of cybercrime.
So in the case of Scattered Spider, is it powerful that they are with Black Hat? Of course. I think that it's important to know that we are against a very capable set of adversaries. They're very good at their work. We're also very good at our work.
In January, the Bureau arrested a 19-year-old from Florida, Noah Urban, charged with stealing cryptocurrency. He's pleaded not guilty. Cyber investigators have tied him to Scattered Spider, but so far not to the casino heists. Last month, 2 more arrests, both tied to Scattered Spider, one allegedly involved in the casino hack. Others are still out there hiding in plain sight. Allison Nixon calls Las Vegas a harbinger.
The level of cybercrime has risen to the point where it feels overwhelming, and every year it gets worse. And it feels like, as defenders, it's almost like we're winning every battle and losing the war.
In the past few years, facial recognition technology has become a critical tool for law enforcement. The FBI has used it to help identify suspects who stormed the Capitol on January 6, and state and local police say it's been instrumental in cases of robberies, assaults, and murders. Facial recognition software uses complex mathematical algorithms or instructions to compare a picture of a suspect's face to potentially millions of others in a database. But it's not just mugshots the software may be searching through. If you have a driver's license, there's a good chance your picture might have been searched, even if you've never committed a crime in your life. In January 2020, Robert Williams arrived home from work to find 2 Detroit police officers waiting for him outside his house in the quiet suburb of Farmington Hills, Michigan.
You are under arrest for your warrant, for your outstanding warrant. Can I see the warrant?
They had a warrant for his arrest.
Oh, absolutely, Hold on a second.
He'd never been in trouble with the law before and had no idea what he was being accused of.
I'm like, you can't just show up to my house and tell me I'm under arrest.
Can I see what we're looking at?
The cop gets a piece of paper and it says,
there you go,
felony larceny on it. I'm like, bro, I didn't steal nothing. I'm like, y'all got the wrong person.
Williams, who's 43 and now recovering from a stroke, was handcuffed in front of his wife, Melissa, and their 2 daughters.
We thought it was maybe a mistaken identity, like, did someone use his name?
He was brought to this detention center and locked in a cell overnight. Police believed Williams was this man in the red hat, recorded in a Detroit store in 2018, stealing $3,800 worth of watches. When Detroit detectives finally questioned Williams more than 12 hours after his arrest, they showed him some photos, including from the store security camera.
So he turns over the paper and he's like, so that's not you? And I looked at it, picked it up, and held it up to my face, and I said, I hope y'all don't think all black people look alike. At this point, I'm upset, like, bro, why am I even here? He's like, so I guess the computer got it wrong.
The police officer said the computer got it wrong.
Yeah, the computer got it wrong.
Williams didn't know the computer they were referring to was a facial recognition program. Detroit police showed us how their system works. First, a photo of an unknown suspect is run against a database of hundreds of thousands of mugshots, which we blurred for this demonstration.
It's an electronic mug book, if you will.
James Craig has been Detroit's chief of police since 2013.
Once we insert a photograph, a probe photo, into the software, the computer may generate 100 probables, and then they rank these photographs in order of what the computer suggests or the software suggests is the most likely suspect.
The software ranks it in order of most likely suspect to least
absolutely.
Likely. It's then up to an analyst to compare each of those possible matches to the suspect and decide whether any of them should be investigated further. In the Robert Williams case, Detroit police say they didn't have an analyst on duty that day, so they asked Michigan State Police to run this photo through their system, which had a database of nearly 50 million faces taken from mugshots, but also state IDs and driver's licenses. This old driver's license photo of Robert Williams popped up. We learned it was ranked 9th among 243 possible matches. An analyst then sent it to Detroit police as an investigative lead only, not probable cause to arrest.
What happened in the case of Robert Williams? What went wrong?
Sloppy investigative work.
Sloppy, Chief Craig says, because the detective in Detroit did little other investigative work before getting a warrant to arrest Williams.
The response by this administration, that detective was disciplined, and subsequently a commanding officer of that command has been de-appointed. But it wasn't facial recognition that failed. What failed was a horrible investigation.
2 weeks after he was arrested, the charges against Robert Williams were dismissed.
The police in Detroit say that the Williams case was in large part a result of sloppy detective work. Do you think that's true?
That's part of the story, for sure. But face recognition is also part of the story.
Claire Garvey, a lawyer at Georgetown's Center on Privacy and Technology, estimates facial recognition has been involved in hundreds of thousands of cases.
Face recognition.
She's been tracking its use by police for years. Legislators, law enforcement, and software developers have all sought out Garvey's input on the topic.
Because it's a machine, because it's math that does the face recognition match in these systems, we're giving it too much credence. We're saying it's math, therefore it must be right.
The computer must be right.
Exactly. When we want to agree with the computer, we're going to go find evidence that agrees with it.
But Garvey says the computer is only as good as the software it runs on.
There are some good algorithms, there are some terrible algorithms, and everything in between.
Patrick Grother has examined most of them. He's a computer scientist at a little-known government agency called the National Institute of Standards and Technology.
Different races, different sex.
Every year, more than 100 facial recognition developers around the world send his lab prototypes to test for accuracy.
Are computers good at recognizing faces?
They're very good. They're better than humans today.
Are these algorithms flawless?
By no means.
Software developers train facial recognition algorithms by showing them huge numbers of human faces so they can learn how to spot similarities and differences. But they don't work the way you might expect.
We've all seen in movies computers that form a map of the face. Is that what's happening with facial recognition?
I mean, historically, yes. But nowadays, that is not the approach.
So it's not taking your nose and comparing it to noses in its database, and then taking eyes and comparing it to eyes?
Nothing so explicit. It could be looking at eyebrows or eyes or nose or lips. It could be looking at skin texture. So we have 20 photos of Anderson Cooper. What is consistent? It's trying to uncover what makes Anderson Cooper Anderson Cooper.
A year and a half ago, Grother and his team published a landmark study which found that many facial recognition algorithms had a harder time making out differences in Black, Asian, and female faces.
They make mistakes, false negative errors where they don't find the correct face, and false positive errors where they find somebody else. In a criminal justice context, it could lead to an incorrect arrest.
Why would race or gender of a person lead to misidentification?
The algorithm has been built on a finite number of photos that may or may not be demographically balanced.
Might not have enough females, enough Asian people, enough Black people among the photos that it's using to teach the algorithm.
Yeah, to teach the algorithm how to do identity.
Claire Garvey points out the potential for mistakes makes it all the more important how police use the information generated by the software.
Is facial recognition being misused by police?
In the absence of rules, what's misuse? There are very few rules in most places around how the technology is used.
It turns out there aren't well-established national guidelines, and it's up to states, cities, and local law enforcement agencies to decide how they use the technology. Who can run facial recognition searches? What kind of formal training, if any, is needed? And what kind of images can be used in a search? In a 2019 report, Garvey found surprising practices at some police departments, including the editing of suspects' facial features before running the photos in a search.
Most photos that police are dealing with, understandably, are partially obscured. Police departments say, no worries, just cut and paste someone else's features, someone else's chin and mouth into that photo before submitting it.
But that's like half of somebody's face.
I agree. If we think about this, face recognition is considered a biometric, like fingerprinting. It's unique to the individual. So how can you swap out people's eyes and expect to still get a good result?
What we call a probe photo.
Detroit's police chief, James Craig, says they don't allow that kind of editing with their facial recognition system, which cost an estimated $1.8 million and has been in use since 2017. He says it's become a crucial tool in combating one of the highest violent crime rates in the country and was used in 117 investigations last year alone.
We understand that the software is not perfect. We know that.
It's got to be tempting for some officers to use it as more than just a lead.
Well, as I like to always say to my staff, the end never justifies the means.
I'll see you later.
After Robert Williams, another alleged wrongful arrest by Detroit police came to light. Chief Craig says they put in place stricter policies limiting the use of facial recognition to violent crime.
Let your code of ethics and integrity guide you.
Requiring police to disclose its use to prosecutors when seeking a warrant and adding new layers of oversight.
So analyst number one will go through the methodical work of trying to identify the suspect. A second analyst has to go through the same level of rigor. The last step is if the supervisor concurs, now that person can be used as a lead only. A suspect cannot be arrested alone and charged alone based on the recognition.
But there are police departments like this one in Woodbridge, New Jersey, where it's unclear what rules are in place. In February 2019, police in Woodbridge arrested 33-year-old Najir Parks.
Did they tell you why they thought it was you?
Pretty much just facial recognition. When I asked them, like, well, how did you come to get me? Like the computer brought you up. The computer's not just gonna lie.
Police said a suspect allegedly shoplifted from this Hampton Inn and nearly hit an officer with a car while escaping the scene. They ran this driver's license the suspect gave them through a facial recognition program. It's not clear if this is the perpetrator, since law enforcement said it's a fake ID. According to police reports, the search returned, quote, a high-profile comparison to Najir Parks. He spent more than a week in jail before he was released to fight his case in court.
I think they looked at my background. They pretty much figured, like, he had the jacket, we got him. He's not gonna fight it. He don't.
When you say he had a jacket, you had prior convictions?
Yes.
What prior convictions did you have?
I've been convicted for selling drugs. I've been in prison twice for it, but I've been home since 2016. I had a job non-stop the whole time.
Facing 20 years in jail, Park says he considered taking a plea deal.
I knew I didn't do it, but it's like, I got a chance to be at home, spending more time with my son, or I got a chance to come home and he's a grown man and might have his own son.
Because I think most people think, well, if I didn't commit a crime, there's no way I would accept a plea deal.
You would say that until you're sitting right there.
After 8 months, prosecutors failed to produce any evidence in court linking Parks to the crime. And in October 2019, the case was dismissed. Parks is now the third black man since last summer to come forward and sue for wrongful arrest involving facial recognition. Woodbridge police and the prosecutor involved in Parks' case declined to speak with us. A spokesman for the town told us that they denied Parks' civil claims in court filings.
If this has been used hundreds of thousands of times as leads in investigations, and you can only point to 3 arrests based on a misidentification by this technology, in the balance, is that so bad?
The fact that we only know of 3 misidentifications is more a product of how little we know about the technology than how accurate it is.
Do you think there are more?
Yes, I have every reason to believe there are more. And this is why. The person who's accused almost never finds out that it was used.
Robert Williams says he only found out it was used after detectives told him the computer got it wrong. He sued with the help of the ACLU. The city of Detroit has denied any legal responsibility and told us they hope to settle. While the use of facial recognition technology by police departments continues to grow, so do calls for greater oversight. Within the last 2 years, one city and one state have put a moratorium on the technology, and 19 cities have banned it outright.
More Americans than ever rely on alarm systems, gates, or doorbell cameras to help protect their families. But statistically, you are now more likely to be the victim of theft online than a physical break-in at home. A new report from the FBI reveals that Americans lost more than $10 billion last year to online scams and digital fraud. As we first reported in May, people in their 30s, who are among the most connected online, filed the most complaints. But we were surprised to learn the group that loses the most money to scammers is seniors. Tonight, we will show you how cyber con artists are using artificial intelligence, widely available apps, and social engineering to target our parents and grandparents.
It's like a death in the family almost.
Well, she's worked so hard, you know.
For my money, I sure have.
Susan Monahan and her daughter Tamara are talking about how the 81-year-old was conned out of thousands of dollars in what law enforcement calls a grandparent scam.
Tell me about the call that you got.
There was a young adult on the line saying, "Grandma, I need your help," in a frantic voice, scared, saying, "I was driving and suddenly there was a woman stopped in front of me. She's pregnant and I hit her and they're going to take me to jail. And Grandma, please don't call my mom and dad because I don't want them to know." And I said, "Brandon, it doesn't sound like you." He said, "Oh, I have a cold, Grandma."
You think it's your grandson?
I do. And he said, "Grandma, a friend of mine has an attorney that we can use and that we can do something about me going to jail." And I said, "Yes, of course."
Monahan said the scammer, pretending to be a helpful attorney, got on the line. It was June of 2020, during the pandemic, and he promised to keep her grandson out of jail if she could get $9,000 for bail to him quickly.
What other instructions were you given?
I needed to make an envelope that was addressed to this certain judge that he was going to coordinate this through, and write on there, and they gave me the name, the address, and everything else for this envelope.
Did it sound pretty legitimate?
Oh, absolutely. He had the legalese.
Monahan is a tax preparer with an MBA. The scammer kept her on the phone as she rushed to the bank.
What do you say?
He said, when you go there, make sure you tell them that it's for home improvements, because they might question the fact that you're withdrawing $9,000.
Minutes after Monahan got home with the cash, a courier showed up to take it. This is video from the doorbell camera. You can hear Monahan on the phone with the scammer as she hands off the money.
She said to move your butt because they're on a deadline.
She says as soon as the courier left and the adrenaline left her body, she was filled with a sick feeling she'd been scammed.
It's just devastating.
What did they do to your mom? Beyond the money, beyond taking $9,000 from her?
Well, it's your livelihood. Sorry. It just gets you, like, in your gut.
The Federal Trade Commission reports scams like these skyrocketed 70% during the pandemic when seniors, home alone, went online to shop or keep in touch with family.
How much money were you scammed out of?
$11,300.
$14,000.
$7,600.
Judy Addig and her husband Ron, a retired iron worker, were victims of the same grandparent scam as Susan Monahan. That's the view from their doorbell camera, as the same courier took off with $7,600 of their savings.
$7,600 hits hard.
Well, that was for our, if we wanted to go on a trip or something. It was terrible. I was a mess.
Steve Savage, a retired scientist, was scammed when he opened a fake email from the Geek Squad.
The email said that your bank account is being charged $399 for another year. And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't remember it being anywhere close to that.
The customer service number went to a scammer posing as a representative of the company. Savage was duped out of $14,000. Esther Maestre was scammed too. The retired nurse says an alarm sounded on her iPad with a message to call tech support. She did.
He said that last night between 4 and 9 p.m., your bank account has been hacked.
And your heart probably stopped.
You know, I felt so nervous. But he said, I am going to transfer you to another guy who is a security at Chase Bank.
That fake bank employee told her hackers might be able to access her bank account and instructed her to immediately withdraw money and deposit it into a new account for safekeeping. Maestra did and lost $11,000.
And have you been able to recover any of your money?
Nothing.
Nothing.
I'm the one that pulled the money out of the bank, so I won't be reimbursed.
If your house gets broken into, you call the police. If this happens,
there's no one to call.
Scott Perello is a deputy district attorney who runs San Diego's Elder Justice Task Force and connected us to the victims you just heard from. He says studies show only 1 in every 20 seniors who've been scammed report it. Often, they're embarrassed.
Most people who have not experienced this think, well, these people must have dementia or Alzheimer's. It's not the case. Our victims are sharp as a tack. We had a woman, 66 years old. She came home. She got a message on her computer from Microsoft, and the message said that she had a virus on her computer, and then that virus had somehow infected her financial accounts. Within a matter of weeks, this victim had lost $800,000.
oh my gosh.
The scariest part of these scams is that these victims have no recourse. They're left bewildered.
What typically happens?
The seniors that have the courage to report that this has happened are being told that, I'm sorry, there's nothing we could do. And that is the reality, that a local police detective in Kansas City doesn't have the reach to go investigate a case that's being operated from the Caribbean or from Nigeria or Ghana.
Investigators have also traced scams to Europe, Southeast Asia, and Canada.
Underreporting.
To combat them, San Diego's Elder Justice Task Force has taken a new approach. Investigators collect every local fraud case, then collaborate with federal authorities to connect them.
If we have a victim that lost $12,000 here in San Diego, there is without question dozens of other victims to the same scam and millions of dollars in losses. And then once we identify that the scam is part of something much larger, then we can deliver that to our federal partners with the reach to go around the country, because these are networks. These are transnational, organized criminal networks.
In 2021, Perello helped the FBI bring down a network of criminals who stole millions of dollars from elderly victims. Remember those doorbell videos from the grandparent scam? The Courier, a 22-year-old Californian, was the starting point for the FBI's case. She's serving time for her role. But the FBI says the scam's ringleaders, 2 Bahamian nationals based in Florida, fled the country before they could be arrested.
If you don't know how a criminal thinks, then you really don't know how you can protect yourself online.
Rachel Toback is what's called an ethical hacker. She studies how these criminals operate.
So ethical hackers, we step in and show you how it works.
Toback is the CEO of Social Proof Security, a data protection firm that advises Fortune 500 companies, the military, and private citizens on their vulnerabilities. We hired her to show us how easy it is to use information found online to scam someone. We asked her to target our unsuspecting colleague, Elizabeth. Toback found Elizabeth's cell phone number on a business networking website. As we set up for an interview, Toback called Elizabeth, but used an AI-powered app to mimic my voice and ask for my passport number.
Oh, yes, I do have it. Okay, ready? It's...
Toback played the AI-generated voice recording for us to reveal the scam.
Elizabeth, sorry, need my passport number because the Ukraine trip is on. Can you read that out to me?
Does that sound familiar?
Yes. And I gave her... Wow.
I have your
duped.
passport
I'm
number.
sitting over there.
What did it say on your phone?
Sharyn.
How did you do that?
So I used something called a spoofing tool to actually be able to call you as Sharyn.
Oh, so I was hacked, and I failed hacking.
But everybody would get tricked with that.
Yeah.
Everybody would. It says Sharyn. Why would I not answer this call? Why would I not give that information?
Toback showed us how she took clips of me from television and put it into an app that cloned my voice. It took about 5 minutes.
I am a public person. My voice is out there. Could a person who's not a public person like me be spoofed as easily?
Anybody can be spoofed. And oftentimes attackers will go after people. They don't even know who these people are, but they just know this person has a relationship to this other person. And they can impersonate that person enough just by changing the pitch and the modulation of their voice that I believe that's my nephew and I need to really wire that money.
Toback says hackers no longer need to infiltrate computers through a back door. She says 95% of hacks today happen after a user clicks on a text, a link, or gives personal information over the phone.
You were able to hack my colleague Elizabeth, who is a tech-savvy millennial. What does that tell you?
Anybody can be hacked. Anybody can fall for what Elizabeth fell for. In fact, when I do that type of attack, every single time the person falls for it.
She said hackers armed with basic information, like a relative's name found online or an app that can mimic a voice or change the caller ID, can create a convincing story.
If you were to receive a phone call, a text message, an email, and it's asking for something sensitive, urgent, or with fear, that's when the alarm bells have to go off in your head and they want me to give something to them. I'm gonna take a beat and I'm gonna check that this person is who they say they are. I call it being politely paranoid.
Politely paranoid.
Be politely paranoid.
Toback has worked as a consultant for Aura, a Boston-based technology company that created software to protect the identity, passwords, finances, and personal data for entire families in one app.
So here you can see a full footprint of everything that's happening inside the family.
Hari Ravichandran is the CEO of Aura. He says their software can reroute scam calls away from grandparents.
If the parent is getting a call and we are identifying using AI that the call is a potential scam call, then they can route that call to me.
Does this stop the call from getting in?
It does.
So it just blocks the call?
When the call comes in, it will have a recording that says, let me know who you are, what's your intent. If it's an unknown person, if it's a known person that's already in your contacts, it'll go right through.
Ravichandran says AI is also used to monitor finances and alert users of problems in real time.
If I see a charge from my mom for $10 at Starbucks, that feels okay. But if there's a $500 charge from Starbucks, something's off kilter. So we try to figure out with AI contextually what's different. But if something is off pattern, you can look at that and say, okay, well, something's off here. I need to go take care of this.
San Diego Deputy District Attorney Scott Perello says more help is needed from law enforcement and the banking and retail industries to protect seniors. The FBI reports over the past 2 years, the losses from digital theft have doubled.
The trends and the data are horrifying. We have the senior population is growing exponentially every year. We have this dynamic of underreporting, and then we have the technology coming. People are convinced that AI is playing a part in maybe pretending it's the grandchild's voice. We're all just next on the conveyor belt, and we all need to do a better job.